Okay, imagine you're a special forces team leader, deep behind enemy lines, right?
Yeah.
You get intel on a high-value target,
Mm-hmm.
a key enemy leader, hiding out in a nearby village.
Yeah,
Taking him out cripples the enemy's operations, right? The clock is ticking,
right.
and they're civilians.
Big time.
This is where understanding firepower, especially how special ops use it, gets really important.
Absolutely, and that's what we're breaking down today. We're diving into ADP 305, Chapter 4, the US Army Doctrine on Fires, how Special Operations Forces use firepower today, on today's battlefield.
Okay, so ADP 305, it's kind of like the rule books.
Yeah, you could say that.
But rule books, they're not exactly known for, being exciting.
You're not wrong, haha. But the interesting thing here is this rule book, it actually shows how warfare itself has changed. It's gone way past just blow things up,
So less Rambo, more like, I don't know, chess, but with missiles.
Exactly. Think about the fire's warfighting function.
Mm-hmm.
ADP 305, it lays it all out right at the beginning. It's about achieving what the commander wants, but it's got to be a really, nuanced mix of lethal and non-lethal effects.
Okay, so break that down. What's that actually look like in the field?
Okay, so your scenario, you've got that high-value target
Yeah.
in that village. The fire's warfighting function, it makes you realize that just destroying the whole place, that's rarely the answer. It's about choosing the right tool for the job.
So instead of just, all guns blazing, maybe you disrupt their comms,
Right.
isolate them from reinforcements, maybe even use non-lethal options to control the situation.
Exactly. It's about getting those objectives, taking out the target, but also, minimizing civilian casualties, keeping things stable. And that needs a deep understanding of every tool you've got.
So there's a lot more thought than just fire at will.
Way more, yeah. And this is where it gets interesting, especially for special ops. They're often working with, Army, joint forces, even multinational forces, coordinating all those different groups, making sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to firepower. That's critical.
I bet. You've got different units, different gear, maybe even different languages, different military cultures, all working together. It's got to be like a logistical nightmare.
It can be, yeah. And that's why in ADP 305, they really stress how important seamless integration is. It's not just about having the firepower, it's about using it the right way as part of a larger strategy.
And that strategy, if I'm hearing you right, you got to think about way more than just the immediate military objective.
You got it. Remember our high-value target. Special ops, they wouldn't just attack without thinking about the bigger picture.
Meaning, what are the political ramifications? What about the civilians? Will this cause more instability down the road?
Exactly. That's where targeting process integration is so important. You have to analyze everything. The politics, the social dynamics, even the economics of the situation. Special ops, they're always working in these really complex situations. One wrong move, and there can be ripple effects for years. Years.
It's like playing chess,
Yeah.
but on a global scale. One bad move,
Okay.
and it triggers a chain reaction you never even considered.
And that's why this next concept from ADP 305 is so important. Restricted targets.
Restricted targets. Okay, now I'm really interested. What falls under that?
So many things.
Yeah.
Think about it. It could be cultural artifacts like mosques, ancient ruins, anything with historical or religious significance.
Mm-hmm.
It could be important people who have influence, but they're not, directly fighting
Yeah.
or critical infrastructure. Think about a dam, a power plant, things that could really destabilize a whole region if they were destroyed.
Okay, so back to our high-value target. Let's say Intel puts them near that dam, the one that's off limits. Now the stakes are even higher.
You got it. And this is where ADP 305, it really shows how much the military has changed. It's not just about firepower now. It's about using it carefully, strategically, ethically. Sometimes completing the mission means not firing a shot.
Which, in those pressure cooker situations, that's got to be a tough call.
It really takes a deep understanding of what your actions might cause. And that's why choosing the right tool for the job is critical.
Right.
ADP 305, it really stresses that special ops, they can't just use the biggest hammer every time. Sometimes just showing force or a targeted non-lethal action, those can be way more effective for achieving long-term goals.
Okay, I get the smart power approach.
Yeah.
But how does a special operations task force actually make it happen? Who do they call when they need fire support, and how does it actually work?
It all comes down to clear structure and defined roles.
Okay.
And a big player here, according to ADP 305, is the Joint Fires Element, the JFE.
The JFE, what do they do? Are they like the 911 operators of fire support?
Kind of, they're that critical link between the Special Operations Task Force and all the potential fire support artillery,
Mm-hmm.
airstrikes, naval gunfire, everything.
So if our special ops team needs air support to take out a target,
Yeah,
they tell the JFE.
exactly. They take the request, analyze it, figure out what assets are the best fit for the job. But it's not that simple. It's not just we need firepower on its way.
Right, right. Because we have all those strategic things to consider.
Yeah,
The restricted targets.
a lot to think about.
Yeah.
That's why a huge part of what the JFE does is something called a feasibility assessment.
Feasibility assessment sounds very official.
Yeah.
What are they actually looking at?
First, they figure out if using firepower is even the right choice. Remember, it's not just about if they can provide fire support, it's about if they should. Is this a mission that needs it? Or are there better ways to get it done?
But they're not just following orders. They're really thinking about the situation strategically.
Exactly. They're also looking at whether the mission, does it match up with what the Joint Force Commander wants?
Mm-hmm.
They think about the potential political fallout risks to civilians,
That's right.
friendly forces, even the long-term impact on stability in the region.
Yeah.
They have to balance the good that firepower might do against the risks.
So basically, making sure, like you said before, that it's worth it.
Yeah, that's the heart of it. And it's not something you take lightly in this line of work.
Of course not.
It just shows how important it is to have really well-trained, experienced people in the JFE. They've got to think strategically, make good decisions under pressure, and coordinate with all kinds of units and organizations.
So they're kind of the unsung heroes
Yeah.
of a lot of successful missions. But it's not just the JFE, right? There are other groups involved in coordinating fire support too, right?
You're right. ADP 305, it also talks about the roles of the Special Operations Command and Control Element. We'll call it the SOCC, and the Special Operations Liaison Element. It's often called the SOLE.
Okay, more acronyms, more coordination. I'm seeing a pattern here.
It's all about making sure everyone's on the same page. When it comes to using firepower the right way, think of it like the SOCC. They often work at higher levels, like the core level. They're like the conductor of an orchestra.
Okay.
They have to keep track of everything going on in a certain area, and they make sure that the fire support that the JFE is putting together, it all lines up with the bigger strategy.
So they're looking at the big picture, making sure everything works together.
Exactly. The SLLE, on the other hand, is more like the section leader for air operations. They're usually at Joint Air Operations Centers and focus specifically on coordinating close air support and air interdiction.
Okay, so if our Special Operations Task Force needs air power to hit a target, the SOLE makes sure that happens smoothly.
Yep, you got it. They're the link between the boots on the ground and the pilots. And this is even more important when we're talking about time-sensitive targets, which, going back to what you were talking about before, that often comes up with high-value targets.
Right, because if that enemy leader is on the move, every second counts.
Absolutely. And that's where you really see what Special Operations Forces can do.
So we're back to that high-pressure scenario. Our Special Forces team, they're out there, time-sensitive target right there. What makes Special Ops so good in those situations?
They train constantly to be incredibly fast and precise, often working behind enemy lines or in really, really tough spots. Think about it. They're giving real-time intel, confirming targets, even guiding munitions with pinpoint accuracy, all while under extreme pressure.
So they're not just calling in fire support randomly. They're deeply involved in the whole targeting process, finding it to finishing it.
Exactly. They're a crucial part of it all, not just a voice calling in. That's where the air-ground integration, what we talked about, that is so important.
Right, right. Because it's not just about troops on the ground calling in artillery. This is about coordinating jets, drones, helicopters, everything.
And it all comes down to this.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just have all those things. It's about using them, right?
Yeah.
Using everyone's strengths to their full potential. The pilots need to know exactly what's up down there, and the ground teams need to be clear about what they need. ADP 305, it's all about that teamwork.
I bet if there's a miscommunication in that kind of moment, it could be really bad.
There's zero margin for error. And that's why ADP 305 really focuses on highly trained Joint Terminal Attack Controllers. They're called JTACs.
Okay, JTACs. What do they do?
They're the connection between the ground and the air power. Often, they're right there with Special Operations Forces on the ground. They guide those airstrikes super precisely so there's less risk of hitting the wrong things. They're talking to the pilots, adjusting coordinates, making sure those bombs hit the right spots at the right time.
It's got to be a tough job.
It takes a special kind of person to stay calm and collected in those moments. Their skills. Super important for making sure those airstrikes actually work and keeping civilians and our own guys safe.
Yeah, they're the unsung heroes for sure. So we've talked about a lot, the fire's warfighting function, how complex targeting is, and how intricate that coordination has to be to call in fire support, especially when time is critical. And it's clear this is way beyond just pointing and shooting.
It's about making huge decisions. Decisions with global impact. Whether or not you're the one calling in the shots, understanding this stuff, it makes you appreciate how the US Army operates, how every little thing works together to achieve those strategic
It's
goals.
kind of like looking inside a watch and actually seeing all the gears moving.
Yeah, and for anyone listening, if you're part of the US Army, that's the big takeaway. ADP 305, it's not just some boring military doctrine, it's like a roadmap to winning on today's battlefield. Really get these ideas, and you're not just following orders, you're becoming a better, smarter, way more valuable asset to your unit, to the whole U.S. Army.
You got to do more than just read it. You have to really understand it. Think about what it means for you, your team, what you're doing. Because when it gets real, when lives are at stake, knowing this stuff, it can be the difference between success and failure.
Exactly.
And on that note, that wraps up our deep dive into ADP 305, Chapter 4.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you found this as interesting as we did. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.